All right, today we're kicking off Chapter 6, and the first lesson in Chapter 6 is dealing with multiplying binomials. Now, you may or may not have done this before. It's entirely possible that this is review. I'm not sure how much of this you've done before or not, so just try to stick with me. Let's start with what is a binomial. And hopefully you see that prefix bi in there, which means two. A binomial is a polynomial with two terms. Now, you may be asking, what is a polynomial? And for now, all you have to know is a polynomial is an algebraic expression. It gets a little more complicated than that. When we get to Chapter 11, that's all about polynomials, and we'll be talking about it more in detail then. But for now, really the big key here is that polynomials have two terms, okay, or two pieces that are separated with like a plus or a minus sign. Make sure you have that written down. Okay, so a polynomial would be something like this. 2x plus 1. One set of these parentheses would be a binomial. Okay, 2x plus 1, that's a binomial. X minus 3, that's a binomial because you've got two pieces here and two pieces here. So this is a binomial and a binomial. And the whole focus of the lesson is how to multiply two of these things together today. And to do that, sometimes you use an acronym called FOIL. Okay, and again, FOIL might stand out to you as something that you've learned before. But FOIL stands for first, outside, inside, and last. And FOIL is a neat little trick to help you remember. Really, it's to make sure that you multiply everything by everything. But really, when you're multiplying binomials, it's just like you're doing the distributive property. Like, for example, if I looked at this example here, 2x plus 1 times x minus 3, really what I'm doing is, if I didn't have that 2x there, you would take this 1 and just distribute it. Okay? And then, similarly, if I didn't have the 1 there, if I just had the 2x, you would take the 2x and distribute it, right? So that's what FOIL does, is it does the distributive property, but it's like a double distributive property because you have to distribute two different things. And FOIL is your way of keeping all of that straight. It's kind of your way of organizing everything. So the F in FOIL stands for first, which means the first term in the first parenthesis and the first term in the second parenthesis. So you're doing 2x times x. Now we haven't done much yet this year where we're multiplying variables, but x times x is x squared. Anytime you're multiplying an x and an x, that's going to make an x squared, because that's what squaring means, is to multiply something by itself. So 2x times x gives you 2x squared. Okay, outside the O, that would be like if you took these four terms and you had them in a straight line, which numbers would be on the outsides of the line? That would be this and this. So you're multiplying 2x times negative 3. 2x times negative 3 gives you negative 6x. Okay. Inside then, if these two are the outsides, then the insides are these ones, the 1 and the x. So I'm going to multiply 1 times x, which is x. And then last, if the first ones were the 2x and the x, the last would be the last terms in each parenthesis. So that would be the positive 1 and the negative 3. And so you would do 1 times negative 3 and get negative 3. So those are your four pieces. So really what I did there, I'm going to erase some of these scribbles, hopefully. Okay, it's not letting me erase, so I just rewrote the problem over here because I want you to see what we really did there. We did 2x times x, we did 2x times negative 3, we did 1 times x, and we did 1 times negative 3. So really, we just did the distributive property 2 times, because the distributive property is where you're making those arcs. Okay, we distributed that 1, we distributed that 2x. So FOIL is nothing more than the distributive property 2 at a time. Okay. Now when I simplify, what I want to do is I want to combine everything. So I want to basically take these 4 pieces and add them together. And for the most part, all you can do is write out this plus this plus this plus this, because not a whole lot of it will combine. But you should see that these middle 2, running out of color options, these middle 2 are both just x's, so those ones can be combined. So when you combine it, you would end up with 2x squared. Negative 6x plus 1x gives you negative 5x. And negative 3. And that would be your final answer. So that's what I'm looking for today. Okay? Again, explaining that process probably took a lot longer than it will take you to actually do one of these problems. Moving on. Let's talk about squaring. Mathematically, to square something means to multiply by itself. And that's going to be important in these next few examples. Okay, so keep in mind, to square means to multiply by itself. So example 1, when I give you x minus 3 squared, the biggest thing I see people doing is this. They want to say, and I would not write this down because it's wrong, but I see people saying, okay, that means I have to square the x, and I have to square the 3, which makes 9, and so then my answer must be x squared minus 9. It's not that simple. Okay, we have to use kind of what we were just talking about a second ago. So, to multiply by itself, when I have that square sitting up there, what that really means is that I need 2 copies of that x minus 3. So I need x minus 3 and x minus 3 side by side. And then I'm going to multiply them together using that FOIL method. Okay? So FOIL. First would be x times x, which is x squared. Outside would be x times negative 3, so that's negative 3x. Inside is negative 3 times x. And last is negative 3 times negative 3, which is positive 9. Then you can add your negative 3x and your negative 3x together. So this becomes x squared minus 6x plus 9. So you've got to be careful, because if you don't write it out this way, you're going to miss that there's a middle term in there. But that would be your final answer, x squared minus 6x plus 9. So let's try example 2. It says expand and simplify 2m plus 4 squared. So that means when I have that square there, that means I need to write that parenthesis out twice. So 2m plus 4 times 2m plus 4. Let's use our FOIL method. So 2m times 2m. To do that, I'm going to write this off to the side here. 2m times 2m means that you're going to multiply 2 and 2, which is 4, and m, which is m squared. So 2 times 2 is 4, m times m is m squared. Okay, so 2m times 2m, 4m squared. 2m times 4 is going to be 8m. 2 times 4 is 8. 4 times 2m is 8m. And 4 times 4 is 16. Combine your middles. You would end up with 4m squared plus 16m plus 16. Once you do enough of these, you may start to see sort of a pattern in how you get from the original problem to the final answer. And so if you're recognizing those patterns, that's okay for you to just use those shortcuts. Okay, but I'm going to let you come to those on your own. All right, let's look at example 3. Example 3 is a little bit brutal. But there's one just like this on your homework, and I know there's one just like this on your test when that finally rolls around. So I would take the time to make sure that you're writing down everything I'm doing here. Okay, in this problem I've got two squares. I've got a square here and a square here. So that means I'm writing out each parenthesis twice. That's going to look like this. B plus 2 times B plus 2 minus B minus 2 times B minus 2. Now I'm going to FOIL out both of those. So B times B, B squared, B times 2, 2B, 2 times B is 2B, and 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, so I've got all of that. Minus. Now, this set of stuff I'm still putting in parentheses because this negative sign right here needs to apply to all of this. But I would multiply it out first before you try to figure out what that negative sign is going to do. So just leave it in parentheses with that negative sign out front so that you remember to distribute the negative later. When I FOIL this, B times B is B squared. B times negative 2 is negative 2B. Negative 2 times B is another negative 2B. And then negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and simplify each side here. So here I would end up with B squared plus 4B plus 4 minus, and then here I'm just putting together those middles. So this would be B squared minus 4B plus 4. Okay, now let's deal with that negative sign. This negative sign here is going to get distributed to everything inside those parentheses. So the first part of my equation is going to stay exactly the same. B squared plus 4B plus 4. Then the second half, this is going to become a negative B squared. Negative and negative make a positive 4B. And negative with this plus is going to make a negative 4. Now let's combine some like terms. Okay. I have a B squared and a negative B squared. Those are going to cancel out. B squared, negative B squared cancel. I have a 4B and a 4B, which makes 8B. And then I have a positive 4 and a negative 4, which also cancel. So all of that work, and your final answer comes down to be just 8B. I'm going to pause there for just a second to let you catch up on writing if you're still trying to catch up. Okay, let's look at the other side. The other side talks about some applications, some ways that you would be using this method. And again, these are sort of oversimplified situations because you're just starting out with this process, but there are some real practical uses to having to do something like this. So, Ella has an 8 by 10 photograph that she wishes to frame with a mat that is W inches wide. Okay. So, draw and label a picture to represent this situation. Really make sure you're writing this down, that you're writing down everything that I'm doing here, because you're going to encounter this same type of problem over and over and over again in this chapter. And they're all going to work exactly the same way. Okay? You've got a photograph that's 8 by 10. So this is 8 inches, and this up here is 10 inches. And you've got a mat around the outside. Now, a mat is going to look just like a picture frame. Okay, it's actually before you get to the frame. It's like the, I don't know, sometimes they do this with like a color, but it goes in front of the picture frame. Or in between the picture and the frame, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Okay, and then the mat is W inches wide. So that means, and I was just trying to erase this because this should look like the same width all the way around, and clearly it does not. But that's okay, we'll make do. So this distance here is W. This distance should be W. This distance should be W. And this distance should be W. And if I were a better artist, those would all look the same. But they don't. Okay, now write an expression for the area of the photo and the frame. So essentially, I'm looking for the area of this whole outside shape. I want the area of this entire rectangle. Okay, well, area of a rectangle is length times width. So what I really need is I need this entire length and I need this entire length. Okay, along the bottom there, it looks like it might be 10 inches, or at least that's the answer I get a lot when I ask that question. But it's not just 10 inches. From here to here is 10 inches. But then you've got a W over here and a W over here. So what I really have is 10 in the middle, a length of W on either side, and I want the whole length put together. That means I'm adding those pieces together. That's going to be 10 plus 2W along the bottom. Okay, similarly up the side, from here to here, I've got 8 inches. And then I've got a W here and a W here. So when I put all of those together, that means that length is going to be 8 plus 2W. I get a lot of people saying W squared here because you're so used to that from the other page. That would only be if you were multiplying W and W. But if I want that total length, I'm adding the W's together. So that would be 8 plus 2W, 10 plus 2W. So now I've got my two dimensions, and I can write out my length times width. My length times width is going to be 10 times 2W. I'm sorry, 10 plus 2W. Just made the mistake I told you not to make. And 8 plus 2W. Now you've got two binomials. Now we can just FOIL it out. So 10 times 8 is 80. 10 times 2W is 20W. 2W times 8 is 16W. 2W times 2W. Well, 2 times 2 is 4. And W times W is W squared. So my final expression, when I simplify it, and I'm also going to write it in what's called standard form. We haven't talked about that yet, but standard form means I'm going to put that W squared out front and I'm going to put the final number at the end. If you look back on the other side, all of our answers ended up like that. They had the squared thing first and the regular number at the end with the X in the middle. So I want to put 4W squared first, and we'll talk more about standard form later. At this point, I probably wouldn't penalize you if you didn't put it in standard form, but you should get in that habit. I'm going to add together the 20W and the 16W and get 36W. And then I have an 80 hanging out there on the end. And that would be my final expression. Okay? Now part C says, if she chooses to use a mat that is 4 inches wide, what will the dimensions of the frame be? Meaning I want to know what would the length and the width of the frame be if the mat was 4 inches wide. Well, basically what they're giving you there is W. Okay, they're saying that that W, instead of being a variable now, is now 4. Now if it asked me for the area, I would take that and plug it right back into this expression. Okay, because that's the expression we came up with for the area. But this isn't asking us for the area, it's asking us for the dimensions, which means I want to know what the length and width would be. And that's what we came up with up here. This is length and width right here. So all I need to do is plug that 4 into each of those. So 8 plus 2W would really be 8 plus 2 times 4, which is 16 inches. Okay. And then 10 plus 2W would be 10 plus 2 times 4, which is 18 inches. Okay, so the dimensions of the frame would be 16 by 18. Okay, so that's one of the types of problems you're going to see and have to apply this method to as we move through this section in this chapter. Let's look at example 5. So you've got one rectangle kind of nestled inside another rectangle. It says write a simplified expression for the area of the inner rectangle. So the inner rectangle is this one. Okay. And again, area is length times width. So length times width. Now since that 1x is just a single term, that's called a monomial, I'm not going to have to set this up with FOIL. It's really just going to look like the distributive property. I'm going to do x times 2x plus 3. Remember, multiplying for area. Distribute that x. X times 2x is 2x squared. And x times 3 is 3x. So that's my inner rectangle, is 2x squared plus 3x. Okay. The outer rectangle, I'm also going to do length times width, but these are two binomials, so here I'll have to use FOIL. X minus 1, x plus 12. Let's FOIL, so x times x is x squared. X times 12 is 12x. Negative 1 times x is negative 1x. And negative 1 times 12 is negative 12. Combine your middle terms. You end up with x squared plus 11x minus 12 for the outside rectangle. Okay. Then it says, give me an expression for the shaded region. What I mean by that is I want the area of all of this without this box in the middle, as though I took that inner rectangle and like cut it out. So I want the area of this, all this, without that inner rectangle. If you're taking that inner rectangle and cutting it out, I hope you can see that what you're really doing is subtracting. If you're cutting something out of something else, you're taking it away. You're taking away that area. So I want to take the area of the outside rectangle and subtract this area of the inside rectangle because I want to cut it out. And luckily, coincidentally, I already found the area of both of those things. So now I just need to subtract them. I need to take the outside rectangle, which was part B, x squared plus 11x minus 12. And subtract, and remember when you subtract, you're subtracting in parentheses because you need to subtract the whole thing. Subtract 2x squared plus 3x. Okay? Remember that negative sign needs to distribute to both of those things. So x squared plus 11x minus 12, and then minus 2x squared and minus 3x. Let's combine whatever like terms we have. So I have x squared and negative 2x squared. So 1 plus negative 2 is negative 1x squared. Gone. 11x and negative 3x would give me 8x. So I took care of those. And then I just have a negative 12 left. So final answer for the shaded region would be negative x squared plus 8x minus 12. Okay, go ahead and give tonight's homework assignment a try. Tonight's homework assignment is a combination of the problems we did on the front of this paper and then the problems we did on the back of this paper. And we will go over that assignment on Monday. We are moving your Chapter 5 test to tomorrow, Friday. Okay, so we'll be taking the test when you come in on Friday, and then on Monday we'll come back and revisit this assignment. Okay, so if you get this done tonight, no homework for the weekend. Have a great night.